Hello everyone, and welcome to the first Warrno video on this channel, which will for sure not be the last one that we will do on STL. And what we will do, as NDA just dropped, will be going over the tabs that you currently have access to in the alpha. This is not the final build, this is what we have access to in the alpha, so launch version of the early access might be different. And yeah, you can see we are in a tent. We have nice 80s aesthetics, and we have solo play, multiplayer play, mod center, which is soon to come, soon TM obviously, where you will be able to get your mods. And then we have armory, and armory also includes deck builder, so let's jump in there. And here we are. Currently, there is only Soviets, Americans, and one East German unit in the game. And as you can see, armory has a lot of filters, and you can see all your different kind of units with tanks, with planes, with ATGM rocket launchers, and all the lovely infantry, which, as you can see, looks quite a bit better than in Steel Division or in Wargame. These guys have nice mustaches, different looks, and are really nice models of infantry. Big improvement there to previous Legion games. When you want to create a battle group, you click here onto the battle group. This tab comes up. You can see all your decks. You can use the filters that you want for it to find the deck you want. But at the moment, there's not that many decks, so you don't really need it. Yes, of now, there are the 3rd US Armored and the 79th Guards, the tank division. I would guess that this is what the game will launch with, but it's not 100% sure yet. So we will see, maybe we will have more division at launch. Currently we only have these two to play with. 3rd Armored Division, let's jump into that. So as you can see, you have your logistics, your infantry, your artillery, your tank, your recon, your AA, helicopters, and air tab. So it's kind of similar to to Wargame, but mixed with Steel Division, and it is lacking the AT tab though, with the AT vehicles being in the tank tab currently. So let's start in logistics, where we have one of the most important units in this game already in front of us, the M151 MUT CP, which is a CV unit, a command vehicle that can capture points, and it has 6 of them in one card. You can see down here, you can choose between 4 experience levels, up to 4 experience levels you can choose from. This one is limited to only veteran. Meanwhile, you have other options for command vehicles, the M577, or even a command helicopter. In the supply, you have also options to choose between 4 different supply trucks. As fuel is in this game again, you will really need supply trucks. Even, like, it's not like Steel Division, where you can play without supply trucks quite often, because your units run out of ammo quite slowly and often die before they run out of ammo anyway. Here, that's not quite the case. Even normal frontline units need supply, especially helicopters often need to be refueled. And yeah, if we go over to infantry, you have, for the Americans, starting with military police, quite a lot of choices. This over here is one of my favorite units in the game currently. It's a cheap unit, the military police M67. The M67 being a really nice recoilless gun that, thanks to the high veterancy of the military police, can also deal quite a lot of damage to enemy vehicles and enemy infantry units. And for 25 points, that's quite cheap. Also, they come in a pretty cheap transport. The M151A2 MUD, and that is a Jeep with lovely MGs. But a big thing about this game, you can sell unarmored transports again. So to get rid of the wargame meta of just spamming transports and like using them as recon vehicles by finding out where the enemy enemy units are, that by letting them fire upon them, whilst also not having the disappearing transports of Steel Division, they made it so that every transport costs get money, even the ones that don't have weaponry on them, but you can't sell them back, and then they just start driving back to the spawn point and will be sold for their full price. So you could also use them as recon, but it costs you to use them as recon now. And yeah, the MUD has an MG, but you can also sell it back because it is unarmored, so you can get the 25 points back if you don't want the truck. In the command tab, you also have CVs now in the infantry tab. You not have them in the logistic tab only, like in Wargame. Or in the, like, you also have tanks, your helicopter commanders come here. They're not in the helo tab, but yeah, in the infantry tab you also have infantry CV now that you can choose to use here. And yeah, we have engineers and engineer leaders. Engineer leaders only having 5 M16s, not being any special. They come in normal transports as well. One being a truck, one being the M13, M11, M113, I guess, being a armored vehicle with a heavy MG on top. And then we have engineers, which have the satchel grenades just like in Steel Division, but as the ranges feel a bit longer that you usually fight over, I don't find them as, and the time to kill is also a bit lower, I don't find them as useful. Engineer Flash, these are more useful because they also have HE, but their HE is an incendiary rocket launcher with 530 meter instead of 70 meter. So they actually can reach the enemy's infantry quite easily with that. It's basically like a long-range Molotov, so these are quite useful. And then we have the first anti-ATGM missiles, being the Dragoons, in the hands of these engineers. We will see quite a lot of Dragoons in this deck. Next, Fireteam Law. They have an anti-tank rocket launcher, but with only 530 meter range and only 13 penetration. Penetration system working the same as in Wargame, not like in Steel Division. It's not a lot, as you will see when we come to the tanks and the armor. Meanwhile, the Fireteam Dragon has the ATGMs. Also, the Dragons, the Fireteams don't come in normal trucks or in like the armored personnel carrier. They come in the Bradley. And the Bradley is really, really good, because if we have a look onto the Bradley has TOW 2s, and TOW 2s are really good ATGMs. And it's also quite cheap, 90 points. If you can see, the prices overall have increased compared to Steel Division or Wargame. This is so that balancing will be easier by having their more having the price differences being bigger. It's still 5-point increases like in all the other Eugen games, so there will be no 39-point cost or anything, but at least the difference between the cheapest infantry, 25, and the most expensive infantry being 70, already shows you there will be more space for balancing, which is a really big improvement in my eyes. Then we come to the Aero Rifles, which, as the name says, are airborne, and they come in a helicopter, the legendary Black Hawk. So you can fly them around and land them behind enemy lines and be really obnoxious with it, just like in Wargame. Then you have Mechanized Rifles, which are the bigger infantry squads. They also have the Dragon, and they have a bit more firepower, having or like a lot of firepower, having 3 LMGs and 8 M16s. And then another commander that is just another choice of commander compared to the engineer leaders by having a heavy LMG and a tank rocket, but obviously also being quite a bit more pricey. Artillery tab only has you 4 options, one being a half-track mortar or a full-tracked mortar, then a long-range artillery howitzer, the M109. Here you can also see armor on these is not that high, so everything can penetrate them quite easily. And then you have your clusters, rocket launcher and a normal rocket launcher. And yeah, these have quite a lot of range, as you can see. And the cluster one also can penetrate armor when it hits them. But overall, the effectiveness of these is okay, but it's not insane. Artillery, for sure, does a lot of stress damage, but the damage is not quite the level of Steel Division, I would say, which I guess every team game player will like. And I also like that they do a lot of stress damage, but not that much damage. We will see that in the first gameplay video. Now, let's come to the tank tab, where also the ATGM rocket launchers are included. Our first tank is the M728 CEV, which in Steel Division would obviously look like a super chunky and super good tank, but in this game, it's the cheapest we got, with 105 points. which in Steel Division would be 50 points if you would convert the prices. The normal income for both decks is 130 per minute. Ticks is also per minute, like in Steel Division, not per second, like in Wargame. And yeah, you have 13 frontal armor. You see the side armor here. Then you have a big howitzer gun that, as you can see, doesn't have any normal penetration value. It only fires HE, so that's why this tank is so cheap. It's an HE tank only. Rangers currently are a bit odd with the numbers, but you will get used to that, and hopefully they might streamline that at some point, like this being 1750 or so. Currently the numbers are a bit odd, but we will see how this goes. And then it has 2 MGs that can fire with as well. It's pretty solid, like, anti-infantry support or unarmored vehicles, and it also obviously helps by taking hits from other vehicles. And you can also see here more important stats. You can see hit points of tanks again. This one has 10 hit points. You can see the autonomy, how much this vehicle can drive around till it runs out of fuel. You can see the max speed, optics, stealth, road speed, fuel, so the amount of fuel it will take out of a logistics truck to be fully reloaded. Production unit not being as important. One big change from this to Wargame is all the tanks have rocket launchers. And by pressing B, like in Steel Division, you can smoke with them. Infantry, so far, like all the infantry we got, doesn't have smoke. I'm pretty sure there will be infantry with smoke. But yeah, there is no indicator for it yet. There might be an indicator for it at launch. I will also show that off in the first gameplay video. And yeah, you have your ATGM rocket launchers, and then you have your command tanks, and your normal Abrams, and the HA Abrams, as you can see. This one has quite a bit more frontal armor. Other than that, they're quite similar, the gun only being a slight improvement with its penetration value. So yeah, that is it for the tank tab. Third armored not having too many choices there. Abrams all the way, and then some ATGMs, and a small support tank. Let's come over to Recon, where we have the scouts. And Recon has one big advantage above other units in this game, in that you can deploy it forward, a bit further forward. There's extra deployment zones for Recon compared to the infantry and tanks, like the normal deployment zones. So Recon will be the way how you get the fastest to the front line. So Recon is really, really important in this game. Not just for spotting, which it also plays a big role in, but also in getting to the front line the fastest. And here we start with scouts, your normal scouting infantry, that you can choose in no transports, or you can choose them even in Black Hawks. You could also fly them around. Then the M13A3 ACAF with recallless gun on top, which I don't like too much, but it's a cheap vehicle, so that's your choice there. The M150, which at least has the TOW 1, so that has some capabilities of killing tanks, though obviously not being the most effective with it, being a bit older rocket launcher, or not quite as effective rocket launcher. So, but at only 18 points. Then we got the first Recon Helicopter with a small Gatling gun on the side, which is a pretty nice, like the Recon Helicopters are the best way to find enemies. They feel like the best Recon in the game currently, but obviously they also can get shut down pretty easily. And then we come to maybe the best vehicle currently in the game, which for Wargame players might be a surprise. The Bradley is really, really good. And with its being forward deployable, it also can crush enemy pushes quite early on. It has TOW 2s, which are really good anti-tank rockets in this game. Or missiles, I guess, not rockets, because they are, yeah, anti-tank guided missiles. Sorry for saying rockets all the time with missiles. And they also have a solid autocannon that can deal with infantry quite well. And their stealth values and optic values are also pretty good. So they're not excellent. No, they actually have the same optics, it looks like normal scouts. So they can actually spot stuff, and they feel quite stealthy as well. So sometimes they don't even get uncovered by their first shot. Obviously all of that might be changing till launch, but at the moment the Bradley, for its price especially, which is quite cheap, you always have to divide it by 2 if you're coming from Steel Division or a Wargame to like get the feel of where it would be there, as all of this is kind of buffed up. 260. I said 130 is the standard income. 260 per minute is the standard income. 130 it was before this change, when everything was half the price. Yeah, sorry for that. 260 is the standard income per minute. So you can buy nearly 2 of these per minute. And these are really strong. 1,500 being the starting income. Kiowa, AR, really good vehicle as well, as you can also forward deploy this, and it has Hellfire AGMs. And with that, you can also destroy early pushes or snipe CVs by having them coming in from a weird angle. So really nice there as well. Then in the AA tab, we have Stingers, we have Sharpals, we have Pivots, and we have Helicopter. And this helicopter, in my eyes, is currently the best AA piece in the game. It really murders other planes and other helicopters. It has low rate of fire, but if you have 2 or 3 of them, you can one-shot most helicopters, and you also, most of the time, one-shot a plane. And with 80 points, you can buy 3 of them in one tick. So they're pretty cheap as well. Currently, the ground rocket launchers on vehicles feel a bit weird, feel a bit weak. We might have buffs to them in the future. Stingers currently feel quite good, because they can be sneaky, they can move around, they can get close to helicopters, and they even are pretty effective against planes. Meanwhile, the Pivot is a constant damage on the enemy if he is in range, but obviously only having low amount of damage, so the enemy can run away from it once you get the shot on him, but it will keep enemy helicopters away from you. Let's move on to the helicopter tab, and this one is a bit odd in the pricing. We have Cobras and we have Apaches. Let's start with the Cobras. This one has Hydra rockets and a Gatling gun, which is pretty okay in dealing with like infantry, and also doing some stress against vehicles, but it obviously will not kill any armored vehicles too easily, as Hydra rockets don't have any penetration value, and the Gatling gun's penetration value is also rather limited. But if massed, helicopters can be annoying, and this helps you in massing them. Though the more expensive one, you get even 4 per card instead of just 2 with the normal Cobras, so I'd rather take these, as these are still less than 1 tick. Like, you nearly can buy 2 of them per minute as well. And here you get the first toes as well, so these can also deal with tanks. They have 10 hit points, just like the Apache, and Apache has a bit of armor, so that's the difference. Apaches don't get killed by MGs, these get killed by MGs. So that's the difference, but overall these feel quite strong as well. They also have multiple different kinds of payload to deal with the enemy. Then we come to the Apache version with only Hydras. And then we come to the maybe best helicopter in the game. And that is not just by price, because this has Hellfires, Hydras, and an autocannon, and is armored. So it can deal with tanks, it can deal with all of the other ground units. The penetration value of the autocannon is also obviously better, as it is a 30 mil. And the weird point is, that I want to come up to, is this is 245 points. And now we check the 405.1, and you see it loses, like it doesn't get any stats bonus in speed or survivability, and it loses the Hydras. It only has Hellfires. And sure, it has more Hellfires, but getting to use 16 Hellfires is quite tough in this game. So overall, the 245 point Apache feels better than the 405 point Apache. Not just like price value, but just in combat effectiveness, even if they would be the same price. So I hope this is still about to change, but as of the current version, there's no point in playing the Apache with the Hellfires. Let's see if this is still the case at launch. But I really like the American helicopters. They're a lot of fun to play with. And now we come to maybe the best unit in the game, as we start with the air tab. Here we have, first of all, F4 Phantoms that come with cluster, napalm, and HE bombs. Same for the F11E. And you can see they have ACM value again. I think for the American, yeah, it's mostly 20 or 30%, the F11E having the highest. You also can see the hit points are quite similar for all these planes as well, with the difference being the A10 having armor, whilst the rest of the vehicles doesn't have armor. And yeah, all these planes are pretty fun to use. The HE bombs are just got buffed, but the 227 kilogram bombs still feel a bit underwhelming. The Soviets will get 500 kilo bombs, as we will see in a second. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. But the ATGM rockets and the clusters and the napalms feel quite solid. And then you have your AA planes in the form of the F4G Weasel and the F4E Phantom, which are pretty solid AA planes as well, that also can deal with helicopters. But the best plane in the game currently is the A-10 Thunderbolt 2, as it is quite underpriced for what it can do, as it can basically deal with everything. It feels like the IL-2 of Warrno. It has a really good gun that can deal with basically any infantry unit. It has ATGMs that can deal with any tank. Especially if you get 2 of these in, they can usually one-shot most of the tanks, as it has 26 penetration. And with the wargame penetration system, that's enough to get through to most tanks and deal the damage. And air-to-air missiles it has as well, so it can even defend itself against enemy air superiority fighters. And with it being so slow, and also having very good agility, you can dogfight with these guys really well, just like with IL-2s. So we will see if this will stay the same, as currently it just feels underpriced. The AA rocket is not the best, but it's good enough. And so I'm really worried that the Thunderbolt might be a bit too strong currently, but hopefully that will change to launch by making it more expensive. And yeah, that's the American deck. I hope you will have a lot of fun with it. And let's move on to the Soviets. Let's not build a deck here. Let's have a look at the 79 Guards Tank Division. As we also start in the logistics step with your supply vehicles. They don't have a supply helicopters, but they still have a supply CV helicopter. And they have 2 other armored vehicles as CVs. One being a BMP with a gun, and one being a BRDM without any weaponry. And now let's move into the infantry tab, as the logistics tab is really not that eventful. And in the logistics tabs you can see unarmored vehicles are also part of this currently. And you have the US here, which is an unarmored vehicle with a 30mm grenade launcher on top. And I'm not the biggest fan of this. It's cheap, sure, and you get quite a lot of them. So maybe there's some cheese with them. We will see, but currently I don't feel like they do much. So you also have your CVs in the infantry tab here with the Soviets. 2 choices. There are not really that much difference between. One has a RPG, one has a RPG-22. So yeah, 2 different kinds of RPGs. And then you have your Mortal Strelky. Some in a BMP. BMP-1 with an RPG. Then the same without the BMP, with a PTRD choice. So that's the only difference between these two. It's the transport you can get them. I'm not quite sure why they just didn't just put them into the same tab. Also, a weird thing at the moment is that the BMP-1P is the same price as the BMP-2, with the BMP-2, as we can see in a second, being the vastly superior vehicle, as this one has at the moment Malchuka Peace, whilst this one has Concourse as ATGMs, and it has less frontal armor and less side armor than the BMP-2. So overall, the BMP-2 is also faster. So there's no reason to take the BMP-1P if you can take the BMP-2, but that might be also up to change. Then we have the Mortal Strelky Metis, which is similar to the Dragoon, like fire teams on the other side, and as it has an ATGM, but their ATGM deals a bit more damage, so it is quite dangerous for any Abrahams to run into these guys. But the better Soviet tanks can take Dragons quite well for quite a while. And then you have your CQC infantry against Saperis, also throwing, just like the engineers, throwing their grenades. I'm not the biggest fan of this. As I said, the ranges are a bit too far apart, and like time to kill is not that high on moving infantry, so getting these in range of enemy is quite tough. They do a lot of damage though, once they get into range, but not quite what I expected. Especially as you also have a Saperi with a incendiary rocket launcher for the Soviets as well, with an RPO. It only has 2 rounds, instead of the 4 rounds for the Americans, so it gets rid of these quite fast. So you might want to be careful with that. But yeah, it deals the damage on a longer range, and it is still a lot of damage. Like as I said, it's basically a long-range Molotov, which is really nice to have. So I would always recommend taking these over these, even though you get more Saperis. So if you really want the numbers, you take the normal Saperis, but if you actually want to kill enemies, you take the Saperi RPO. Let's move on to the artillery cap, where the Soviets have 2 different versions of howitzers. One being a 122 and one being a 152mm. And then we have the Grats with a rocket launcher. All of this, like these 2 are pretty decent. The Grats also can do some stuff, but I'm not the biggest fan of them currently. But they do some suppression damage. And maybe they will get another buff to launch. We will see. And in 10v10s, they will still be annoying. Like in 1v, I'm always talking out of a 1v1 perspective, or maybe 2v2 perspective. In 10v10, they will still be absolutely annoying. Let's move on to a tank tab, where again we have ATGM vehicles in here as well currently. For the Soviets, we only have the Conquerors currently. The BRDM2 with Conquerors, which is the cheapest vehicle currently in the game. Cheapest, like, non-transport vehicle. And with Conquerors, it actually can kill enemies. So you can spam them out. You get 9 per card on Trained, on Veteran 6. You don't want to take these in Elite. They have quite low accuracy. Their range is not amazing. But if you use all 9 and you kill a T80 with them, for example, they still paid off. So the T80 command. Normal T80, you also nearly paid off. So, or no, you actually also paid off if you kill the T80U. So, as you can see, these are low investment, low reward usually, but if you get the reward, and if you can maybe kill 1 or 2 enemy Abrams with it, then they really paid off already. So I would always recommend taking a card, especially as in a tank division, the tank slots are really cheap. In other divisions, you might not want to take them. Then we get the T80B, which is cheap and reliable tank. It has an ATGM as well, with the Cobra Salkos, so that is really nice. The accuracy on the Soviet ATGMs is not the highest, but having ATGMs on big tanks is nice to have. And the T80B with 160 points is also not that expensive, as you can get it and still have 100 points left in a minute's tick. Whilst these guys already get more expensive. The T80BV as a commander and a normal one, where you can get a couple more per card, up to 6 per card. You can also choose here veterancy quite a bit more freely again on most units. T80Us you can also choose 3 ways, only the T64BV, and obviously the CVs come in and fixed veterancy. Also CVs, just like in Steel Division, buff units around them by 1 veterancy level. So they are a mix of the wargame, where they capture points, that they do here as well, and they also buff units around, so you can also just use them as frontline leaders and not just as capture vehicles, which is a pretty nice functionality. And yeah, the T80BV being a really solid all-around vehicle, having ATGMs being quite fast. As you can see, the road speed is quite insane. So these are your best push units, I would guess, in the Soviet tank tab. Meanwhile, the T64 being also really good workhorse, and then you have your T80Us, which are just super heavy tanks that can deal with a lot of stuff that the Americans throw at you, and before they die. Also having a better ATGM here than the T80Bs and the T80BVs, so you can see these will be dangerous to go against. Let's move on to the Recon, where we have some light armored vehicles as the Recons, the BRDM2 and the BRM1. And then we have 2 different forms of Rajvetkas. The normal one with only 4 men in its squads, but an anti-tank rocket launcher. And then the Rajvetka Heavies, which are 7-man squads, but without any anti-tank capabilities. But these you can bring in BMP-1s, but these you can only bring in UATs. And you also can choose an Mi-8 TV for them with rockets, which is a pretty nice helicopter. Better than the Black Hawk. And the Spetsnaz you can also bring in this. The issue of the Spetsnaz, you can only bring them in this. And then you have an Mi-8K without rockets as a recon option as well. The thing is, the transports ain't recon. It's not like in Steel Division where transports are also recon. At least currently, the transports ain't recons, and the problem with that is that you also can't deploy units in them further forward. So infantry units in transports currently can't be deployed forward, only vehicles can. I hope that's up to change as well. We will see at launch. And then we have Iglas in the AA tab, together with Stvelas, Ozas, and I'm not quite sure what this is. This just came in today, and it doesn't have a name yet, but obviously the Cold War game experts under you will let me know what this is. It replaced another vehicle we had in here earlier. And yeah, overall, then we have the king of AA, the Tunguska. Most expensive and also best AA vehicle currently in the game. Which has its 30 mils and Salko rockets. So overall quite capable of dealing with enemy quite well. The 9M311 is pretty deadly in its duty. But yeah, we will see. Currently, Iglas still feel pretty strong as well. Also, I don't know why the UATS module has ATGM on top, because it doesn't have that. As you can see, it doesn't have that weapon. It just is a visual. So sadly, you can't use your UATS for sniping enemy vehicles. Maybe there's one to come with that. Then in the helicopter, you have 6 cards of Mi-24s, but you only have 3 slots. I hope that's up to change. I hope they make it that you only have 3 cards, but you can choose it on trained level, where you will have 2, or on veteran, where you will have 1 per card. Currently, you have your Mi-24s and 6 cards, and you can only get 1 per card, so you can only use half of the cards, which obviously isn't how it is supposed to be. But these are really good helicopters. They also have a bit of armor, just like the Apaches on the other side, and they have also quite a lot of solid weaponry around. A good 12mm Gatling, and then some good air-to-ground rockets, and some good air-to-air missiles in the Iglas. The issue being that they don't have any ATGMs, so they have to use their air-to-ground rockets to pin down stuff. They are not as deadly against armored vehicles as the Apaches. And then we come to the Soviet Air Tab, where you have quite a lot of choices, and you also have more slots than the Americans. Starting with Su-25s in 4 different versions. Rocket version, which doesn't have any AA rockets, because obviously it has all its pods for the normal rockets, but these air-to-ground rockets are really deadly against infantry. And the Gatling gun also can deal with helicopters quite well, so you can also shoot down helicopters with this without having AA rockets. Then the Su-25AG, also having the Gatling, also having air-to-air rockets like all the other Su-25s. And then coming in with bombs, coming in with cluster bombs, coming in with napalm, and the ATGM coming in with air-to-ground missiles. And as you can see, these guys are chunky, and they are really, really deadly. 30 penetration, they one-shot a lot of tanks, they at least 2-shot every tank. So having these guys flying around and not shooting them down is quite dangerous. Then we have the Su-24Ms. They don't have a Gatling gun, but they have a bit better ECM. These have 10, these have 20. And they are a bit faster, so they can get the payload out easier. They can't stay around for killing helicopters or so, but they're maybe the better way of getting the payload over and then retreating. Though they can't take fire as well as the Su-25. Su-25 also having armor, just like the A-10. Su-24 not having that. So it can dodge AA rockets better, but it can't dodge Gatling gun fire or anything like that as well. Or at least can't take it as well. The other one doesn't dodge it either. But yeah, then we have the first AA plane in the MiG-23ML, which has Wimple AA rockets, and the MiG-23P, which has the same issue as the Apache. The MiG-23ML has more rockets more of the better rockets, But this one has two kind of rockets, and it can shoot them both at the same time. So this one is actually deadlier than the ML, because you will not use all 6 rockets in an air fight most of the time anyway. And yeah, both have a Gatling. And then we come to the MiG-31, which currently only has it only has rockets, and it is really fast. So currently it's not that effective in dealing with air because it overshoots a lot. We will have to see if there will be a workaround. But currently, I'd rather use the MiG-23 than the MiG-31. So that's it with the units and the decks. As you can see, you can choose your deck. You can build your decks down here. The slot system is similar to Steel Division 2 and Wargame. And yeah, let's move now over to what we see here. Multiplayer, you can play ranked, you can create a lobby up to 4v4. There will be 10v10 servers. You can create invite codes as well. Or you also can load up your historical battles, Army General, and skirmishes when they are around. As the game will not launch with historical battles, and I don't think with an Army General either. And you can also find your replays here. And then the solo looks kind of the same, at least where you can click here. You can see your campaigns, your tutorials, your operations. You can click on skirmish, then you have your skirmish set up here, where you can choose your maps. Currently we have 4 maps here, there might be more at launch. Only capture the flag mode. And then you have standard income start is 1,500 points. Lowest you can go is 500, highest you can go is 3,000. Income rate and score limit. And then you can load up your saves and so on here as well. And yeah, let's just have a quick look onto a map, this being the river map, so you can see what it looks like, and then we will end the video there. And then we will see more gameplay in the next one. So yeah, here we go. This is a map. You can see there's 4 control points on this map, for example, in the center. Bravo, Golf, Echo, Delta. They all bring 3 points. There's more on the side. And as you can see, you can capture forward spawn points here as well. Just like in Destruction mode in Steel Division 2 and in like a lot of wargame maps as well. So these are super valuable as well. And yeah, let's have a look at these beautiful graphics and on this beautiful map. And then let's get out of here. So I will leave you with this lovely imagery. Somehow my frames are quite low right now. Usually they're higher. I guess that's because of recording. I have to find a perfect way to get this to 60. But yeah, map is really, really beautiful. And vehicles, let's have a look at these for a second as well. Just launch the battle. And then you can see these are really pretty as well. But with that, I will leave you until the next attempt, where we will have a bit more gameplay. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you in the next one.